Hello and welcome to Switched On, where it's time to stack, raid and get paid as I review Lapis Labyrinth on the Nintendo Switch. Now I'm sure no developers would create a game solely to trigger an epileptic fit from its players, but if there was such a game then Lapis Labyrinth would surely be it. Now I'm no qualified doctor, but I'm going to get right into why I think this game should come with a health warning, but also why it's not entirely doom and gloom. Now the game begins with a short introduction of a story which tells of a golden tree in the middle of a forest labyrinth. Many an adventurer has tried to reach the tree where untold riches can be found. A small town sits at the entrance of the forest and was once a bustling hub as treasure hunters came to try their luck never to return. Eventually, with the tree remaining undiscovered, interest waned and the flow of visitors to the town dried up, leaving it and its folk abandoned. With one last hurrah, an invitation is sent out to the Guild of Adventurers and only one person answers the call. And yeah, you've guessed it, that's where you come in. The story is pretty much that, with the odd short scene thrown in at the end of each zone as you make your way through the story, and it's just enough to give you some motivation to get out there and crush some skulls. Arriving at the town, you create a party of 4 characters from across 8 different classes. You have a small choice of customization over the look of each character, which to be honest is ultimately pointless as the characters, whilst charming, are tiny and there's so much going on the screen both visually and sonically. Whether your character has squeaky voice A or squeaky voice B is a choice you shouldn't lose any sleep over. Now Lapis Labyrinth is a 2D action platformer at its core, and this includes the overworld where you begin your journey. From here you can take on new quests, alter your party, recruit new members and eventually open up the abandoned shops that used to thrive in the town. Each level in one of the 5 zones is made up of a series of floors, each having a 5-minute time limit to clear before the big spirit of the forest comes hunting for you, and with its one-touch insta-kill must make him a real boon at social gatherings. Clearing a floor consists of collecting a number of purple stones, which is the Lapis part of the game's name. Lapis being the blue or purple stone in Latin. See? You don't just get great reviews here, you also get educated. You're welcome. Oh, where was I? Oh yeah, collect enough of these stones and an exit gate will open, which you'll need to find to complete the floor and move on. Now one of the unique features in Lapis Labyrinth is the way your party is formed. Rather than just controlling one character, you control all of your characters at once. Well, kind of. You have a party leader who can be swapped out with the tap of the left bumper button, and the rest of the party all stack on top of each other like anime pancakes. If you take too much damage to your leader, then his head just becomes detached from the stack, because of course it does. Although if you're quick enough, you can collect it back up again, put it back in the stack before they're permanently killed and lost. Now I can't believe I've got this far and not even mentioned the treasure. My word, the treasure! If you love loot, then this is the game for you. Everything you do just farts gems at you, from collecting chests strewn around the land to striking enemies, and that's without mentioning fever mode. Enemies on their own aren't too much trouble to dispatch, but multiple times in a level you'll get trapped in an encounter where a large number of baddies have to be killed before you can move on. Thankfully you have a wide range of attacks, well, too wide actually, and one area where this game starts to fall apart. As I mentioned, you have 4 characters in the party, and I've worked out that each character has a potential of 11 different attacks. So if you want to be technical, you have 44 different attacks that you can use at any one time. Now whilst that's an impressive variety, and I would imagine that's never been bettered in terms of combat options in any other game, it's also overwhelming and of course pretty much impossible to remember every attack and what each attack suits which situation best. I generally just kept a couple in my head, knowing that one character was great at range combat and the other was better at close up and tanking. It seemed to work okay, but in the end combat turns into little more than mashing the basic attack button whilst throwing in a couple of the more powerful special attacks when you have the gauge sufficiently built up. Now that's not to say combat is bad. Ultimately it can feel shallow, but also thanks to the treasure and loot I mentioned earlier, it can also be incredibly satisfying. Striking an enemy will send hundreds of multicoloured gems spinning into the air, sparking a need for that epilepsy warning, which is actually oddly absent from this game. Now strike multiple and it's a cacophony of colour. Building up your fever gauge and ultimately entering fever mode will mean a massive increase in gem output for a short period, and also turn most of the landscape around you into blocks that you can also hit for gems. It's like the world has gem fever, and the only cure for it is more gems. All of this colour and reward for the player is no coincidence either. In a recent showcase by the game's developers, they said they know that players respond well to this kind of on-screen feedback and reward, so they basically built a game around throwing huge numbers of rewards at players. Well, call me shallow, but it works for me. Between levels, you can alter your gear your party is equipped with, but I found this a real wasted opportunity, as the UI is really clunky and poorly explained, and I honestly didn't know what I was doing half of the time, with endless pages of stats that didn't seem to make any difference, and hundreds of different items all with similar names. This RPG side of the game is really fluff that could easily have been dropped from the game with little consequence. Sometimes I think devs just throw RPG elements into games to give them a false sense of depth, and again, it's not really needed here. It doesn't take too long to work through all the zones, each of which contain 5 to 10 different levels. Another big issue in the game is the amount of repeated stages you have to play through. Pretty much every level in a zone consists of the same floor layout, and it soon gets really repetitive. It's really odd that they chose to have these same stages repeated over and over. Presentation wise, Lapis Labyrinth is pretty good. The character graphics are charming, and the worlds, whilst repetitive, are colourful and detailed. The gems and treasure look great as they fly around the screen, though once things do get a bit hectic, the frame rate can plummet into the teens at times. Sound wise is a mixed bag with some nice music and varied number of voices. But everything here is in Japanese with subtitles, so if that's not your bag, then you're probably going to struggle. Now, unusually for an NIS America game, the pricing seems much more in keeping with what you're getting in the game, with $30 and £27 being closer to the price I'd be willing to pay. Now, would I recommend it at those prices? I'd say probably not, and would be looking for around about the $25 mark as a better price. Now, Lapis Labyrinth is like a bag of candy. It's colourful, fun, gives you an instant high, but once that initial sugar rush wears off, you're left flat and tired and wanting something with a bit more substance. It's by no means a bad game, and there is some fun times to be had here, but perhaps ultimately it's one to pick up in a sale. I'm going to give Lapis Labyrinth on the Nintendo Switch an above average 6 out of 10. Well, thank you so much for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please remember to subscribe below and drop me a comment if you're thinking about picking this one up and have any questions. Be happy to help. But until then, I shall see you on the next video. Bye!